Rob, shall we get started, or you want to?
Sure.
Wait?
I think that makes sense. And as people join in, again, the recording is going to be good for those who couldn't be here today. And this is sort of as Eric was saying, we've got some technology now that means that people can refer to this for a while. So that's really a benefit of having this Zoom, as well as the name tags that are already there on everybody's screen, and that's a nice thing too. Well, Lee and Eric, I appreciate y'all being here. Bill's going to introduce y'all in a second, but I just wanted to start us off with the prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious Lord, Heavenly Father, in you we live and move and have our being. And we thank you for all the blessings of this life. And as we know that we are guided to eternal life, that we still have some things here on earth to do, what we are calling our legacy. Help us to be mindful of the ways that we may love others and have important conversations with them about our wishes and all those things, because we can't take it with us. And we know that we will be with you, and we give you thanks for that. And we pray for your wisdom and guidance all along the way. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. On behalf of Good Shepherd's Endowment Committee, good afternoon and welcome to this second session of what we call Creating One's Legacy. And just as a reminder, not that we care particularly, but this is being recorded. So either you can go back and review it, or hopefully we'll let people know within a short period of time that it's available on the website. I'm pleased to introduce two people, both of whom I've known probably over 25 years. Eric Toole is a principal of Oakridge Partners, and they're a fee-only financial planning and investment advisory firm in Atlanta. Eric has been advising clients for years and years, and does a great job of giving what I call peace of mind in terms of one's financial future. Lee Mulligan is an estate planning attorney based in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Known Lee a long time. She has a unique quality to relate to her clients very well, and also gives peace of mind when it comes to legal matters and all forms of estate planning, whether it's charitable giving, tax planning, etc. So both of these people will deal with setting up that financial and legal future so that, future crises can be averted when it comes time to deal with them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric, who will speak first.
Sure. Well, thanks, Bill. I've known Bill, like he said, since probably about 1996 or 1997. So we go way back. He's been a tremendous mentor to me, and kind of brought me up in the business back in our days at SunTrust. So appreciate him asking us to participate today. We actually came up and did this in person last year at your church, and enjoyed that. But this is a fun way to do it as well, and something that all of us are learning and getting better at by the moment. So my goal is just to talk for a few minutes before Lee covers the more legal aspects of this type of planning. But I just wanted to walk through a few slides together to take a look at some things that we think about from really my perspective comes from one of financial planning. And you can find out more about our firm there at Oakridge Partners, including my bio and things. When I think about financial planning, which is really one of my true passions is financial literacy, I think one thing that people are shocked at when they talk with our firm is that we focus so much, and I would encourage you as you think about these legacy plans, we focus less on the markets and more on our client's exact situation. And I find having done this for 20 years, that this life planning is really the central key that I would encourage clients to think about. Thinking about things like, what's your story? What are your values and beliefs? What do you want to accomplish with the rest of your life? What lifestyle do you want now and in the future? And I think if you really reflect on that, you'll see that what's happening in the markets per se on a day-to-day basis tends to ebb away. I think clearly we are sitting in an investment advisory capacity, and there are many questions on clients' minds about this virus situation with an upcoming election that is, no matter who you like, going to be a volatile one and an ugly one, but we'll get through it. But some of that really does start to fade away when you just take a step back from the markets and think about your exact situation. From there, when you can think that through, we then really try to get clients to think through what financial resources do you have available and how do you want to go about using them. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. And then step 3 of that is to take those financial resources and invest them appropriately in alignment with those objectives. But when it comes to legacy planning, I really would encourage you to think about going through an exercise with your current advisor or with online tools that are available, and to do some math around breaking your financial assets into 2 distinct categories. The first category here is listed at the top, which is what I think of as critical capital. And by that, I mean that we can actually run a model that shows, based on current lifestyle and goals, how much money you need to have in financial resources to fund your lifestyle from the present time until death, and with a married couple, perhaps the death of the second spouse. And going through that exercise, we're going to be, you would want to think about things like, what is my current monthly spending? What sort of big ticket goals might I have, which might include things like auto replacements, home renovations, educational funds that you might want to establish, normal course of business giving to your children or to charities, etc. And you think about that, in my view, in phases. So it's very common for us to work with clients where from retirement through, say, 75 or 80, we model one level of spending, which is higher. We kind of jokingly call that the go-go phase in life. You know, maybe from 75 to 85, a slower go phase, and after age 85, a no-go phase. Those are joking terms, but they're good ones to think about. And thinking about how much money do you need to keep on your balance sheet to confidently fund those goals in inflation-adjusted dollars. And then having a process by which to go through and monitor that as your lifestyle needs change, as your financial priorities change. We want to be able to quantify the sustainability of those goals, and then again, put an investment plan in place. What we find though is that when we do that, many clients have excess dollars on their balance sheet. So they have more resources than are required in order to make it from now until the second death of the spouse at a comfortably defined lifestyle. By definition, that means that you've got some surplus capital on your balance sheet, and that was the purpose of legacy planning. And so surplus capital we view as the capital that you have available to gift to your children or heirs or to charity, and we view that as being able to be gifted either during your lifetime or to be left as a legacy at death. And I think considering the timing of that is really important. I know I served for many years as the treasurer of my church in Atlanta, and I've hosted many seminars where we talked about things like naming the church in your will, which I'm sure you will touch on here. That's a great thing to do. But then I was also the treasurer, so I knew that current gifts meant a lot too. And so, you know, kind of finding that right balance between naming a church in your will versus current giving, those are the kind of things you want to think about. And I'm sure Lee will speak to this as well. But the next layer of that is which assets to fund those gifts with. Low basis stock is always a good idea for current gifting. IRA and retirement assets tend to be really good asset pools to give at death because you effectively avoid taxes on those assets by giving them from an IRA wrapper. Once we've got those dollar amounts defined, then we would transition and just create a financial plan that allowed us to monitor. I think of this chart like Goldilocks. This is just the tool that we use. Plenty of advisors use a tool like this or similar to this. You certainly can find some online as well. But that monitor in this example, that tan zone is representative of the amount of money prescribed for this particular client that they need to maintain in financial assets in order to confidently meet their financial objectives. So for this client's wish list, which would include current spending, renovations, auto replacements, and a defined legacy intent, this client needs somewhere between $2 and $2.6 million, which is the tan zone of this graph, in financial assets. Our firm tends to not include things like houses and second homes in this analysis because we view those more as lifestyle assets than financial resources. And it gives us an opportunity to track. Those dots are just portfolio valuations at different point in time to know whether we're on track there in the tan zone or whether market conditions or our clients' conditions have changed such that that line dips into the red. We know we've got to tighten the belt. Or when that line pops up into the blue, we know we've actually got even additional surplus funds that we can then go in and think about how to deal with that by some sort of financial plan input adjustment. But I think that's really, from a financial planning perspective, the key to me always gets back to going through a good, robust exercise to really get a sense of critical capital versus surplus capital. And that's a really important exercise to go through so that you've got confidence about what you're doing with respect to current giving and legacy. With respect to one other document I wanted to share, one of my great friends in Atlanta created what's called a love letter, and I will make this letter available through Bill Canby if you would like it. Just reach out to Bill. He has an electronic copy of this letter. One of my good friends in Atlanta created this love letter that is for client use. In bold there it says this form will only work if you fill it out, which is so true of so many things. Lee Mulligan could create a great estate plan for you on that whiteboard behind her, but if you don't sign the documents and execute it and then go retitle the assets the way that she tells you to do it, it's not going to help you very much. So this form is really a paired form I think about. It provides an inventory type document so that we can list advisors, attorneys, brokers, pension benefits, health insurance advisors, etc. Your different advisors on your team. Here on the first page, I had a client pass away last year whose wife called me very upset shortly after his death. Of course, driven partially by his death, but partially given that she didn't know how to access anything. She said, Eric, I don't know the passwords to our credit card account or our bank account or our brokerage account. I have no idea how to look at this stuff. This document allows you, and of course you would want to save this in a secure location, and you need to tell somebody where the safe deposit box key is in that example if you stuck this in a safe deposit box. But it lists just simple things. It's sometimes the simple things that trip us up. Where are my investment accounts? How do I go about logging in? Where are the documents associated with this particular account located? etc. Those passwords are just key to having. And it really provides a lot of things. So again, kind of from an inventory standpoint, this provides you assets, liabilities, and access information. It provides a section for insurance coverage, whether that be term or whole life insurance, health insurance, disability, long-term care. It really does a great job of outlining all that. Did I serve in the military? Here are some employment benefits. This is a list that Lee could probably cover well in terms of here are a list of documents that you may have collected over time: a will, a codicil, a living will, medical power of attorney, etc. When was that signed? Where can I find that document? And just to know that we've got the most current information up to date. Power of attorneys, obviously this wouldn't serve as a power of attorney, but you can identify at least so that those people could be notified that they are in the process of being named in a particular capacity. I have a safe deposit box. Here's where to find the key. I've got a safe. Here's the combination. This is the kind of stuff, this is the stuff that really trips people up. It's an opportunity, again, like you might staple to a will, a personal effects list that just lists any specific assets that you would like to go to a specific person, where those records can be found. This page was the genesis, just so you know, this page was the genesis of why my friend created this document to begin with. His mother passed away, and in a very fortuitous event, she left him a letter. And in that letter, she said, I don't want our pastor to do my funeral service. I want my Sunday school class to do my funeral service. I want these songs to be played at my funeral. I want these scripture verses read. And it's these soft things that really can go a long way when we think about legacy planning. It is a financial lever, but it also is just the ease of administration and letting people know this is what we want. This is a great document. In the back of this, when I was saying it was a paired item, it does have some very hard data. Here's where you can find things. Here's what I own. But it also has a section that just allows for someone to list helpful hints from life experiences. Here's what I learned from high school or college and applied later in life. Here's what qualities I'd look for if I was looking for a spouse. You know, how many of us wish, you know, we had a document like this about our parents. I've had clients use this document and write out a specific note because of this document to each of their children or grandchildren to say, you know, dear grandchild, this is what I value about you. This is what I think is unique about you. So this document really has some good inventory information as well as some softer side information around goals, aspirations, and wishes. So from my perspective, what I would leave you with is when you're thinking about this legacy planning from a financial planning standpoint, I probably should have done those in reverse order. For one thing, just document everything you have, where it is, how to find it, what you think about things. And then the second one is to go through a math exercise just to figure out how you can go about planning for the financial assets that you have and giving some intentional, that's the key word, some intentional thought about spending, gifting, investment decisions, etc. With that, I'm gonna turn it to Lee. I'm at 20 minutes. That's about where I wanted to be.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Well said. That's a great document to have. From a pastoral standpoint too, just as Bill, you mentioned in your opening statement, just taking away the crisis element. It takes some time to do it, but it's a great gift in that legacy of conversation. So that'll be great to have. Thanks for passing it on, Eric. And
I'll have that document, and I'll get it to Ellen, perhaps, if you want me to, Rob. All right, I think we're ready for Lee.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm really very appreciative of the opportunity to talk to you about a subject that's obviously near and dear to my heart, which is estate planning. we kind of in our firm loosely refer to estate planning is giving what you want to whom you want and when you want and how you want. And we can accomplish almost any goal that our clients have in mind if we, I always say, I have a pen here, it's not a magic wand, but I can make it do whatever you want us to do as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or otherwise against public policy. And we've done a lot of very tailored plans for people. We've done a lot of basic plans for people. And I always call my clients snowflakes. It's not because I think they're flaky, but because no two come in the door looking the same. They've all got different family backgrounds. They've also all got different goals, needs, and it's a real honor to be able to work with them and help them accomplish those goals. Before I forget, I don't know if anybody, have I given out this book to your group, Bill? It's my What Now?
I think you did give that out last time, yeah.
Last time. It's an unhefty, very thin little tome that I wrote on North Carolina Guide to Will and Probate and Trust Administration for the non-lawyer. If anyone would like to have these, let Bill know, and I will send a bunch of them over to, or he'll get your address and I can send it directly to you. So that's, just want to make sure that I had gotten that out. I also call estate planning your last vote on earth. If you just pass along to your family your wealth with no instruction about it, no philosophy behind it, what are they going to think that you value the most? It's the money. But I can tell you from firsthand experience and administering hundreds of estates that family wants to know what you want them to do. What would make you be proud of them? I've had all kinds of, Eric brought up his love letter, and I've had clients do all kinds of things. They do videos, they do long letters. I have one client who's got a notebook about this thick that has his views on almost every subject under the sun. So I have one client who did this video, and I said, you know, I know your kids. It's going to be fast forward, fast forward, fast forward through that video. They're not going to.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Listen to every word of wisdom you want to impart. But they do want to know. I know, and what people fight about in estates isn't just the money. What they fight about is the family dynamics that have gone up to leading them to this point. Usually I found if there's been a very, very strong matriarch or patriarch, that sets the world a spin when they're gone, because that lid that kept on a lot of emotions in the family is suddenly lifted, and now they can all go at each other's throats. And to that end, I commend you to be very thoughtful and careful in your estate planning. If you have things that you know particular people are going to fight over, take the fight out of it and make sure that you have made the decision and you're not leaving it to them to fight and make the decision. I had a client who had several pieces of property and 3 adult children. And no matter how much I pressed her to make a division of these properties to her 3 children, she said, oh no, just let them fight over it after I'm gone. And fight over it they did for about 7 years through the courts as to who was to get what piece of property. And there was 1 son and 2 daughters, and the son finally had a heart attack from all the stress of dealing with his siblings over this property. So you can preclude that by making sure that you have said who gets Aunt Dorothy's tea set, who gets the priceless family collection of Tupperware. Believe it or not, I had them fight over Tupperware. So I just want to always caution my clients about that, because they tend to think of that last. And for some reason, it becomes the pivotal point for family disputes after someone's gone. When you're doing your estate planning, there are many roads that you can take. but I think most people go one of two paths. They either decide to leave their assets via will, or they leave them via a revocable living trust. We are very much grounded in trust planning as a firm, particularly for North Carolina. Lots of states have probate processes that are very simple. When I practiced in New Jersey before moving here, to probate a will in New Jersey, you take a 2-page application for probate, death certificate, the will, and a check for $25 and give them to the clerk of court, and you're done unless somebody complains. That is not the situation in North Carolina. In North Carolina, the probate manual is 2 4-inch thick ring binders. If you want to saddle your family with a lot of anxiety and angst, make sure that you leave everything through a will rather than a trust. That said, there are people for whom a will makes sense. I have clients who've got a substantial estate, but they have no close family. They emigrated here from Europe 40 years ago. They have no children. The only child that they're interested in taking care of has 4 legs and a fur coat. And beyond that, they're interested in charity. So for them, a will makes sense. It's going to, because there's no one that you're trying to protect except for the puppy, and we can do that with a pet trust. A lot of those. Got a lot of clients who have 4-legged family, and they want to make sure that they're well taken care of. So we try to help them in any way we can too. But for most folks, I think a trust makes more sense. You don't have to be a billionaire to have a trust. My clients generally have anywhere between $500,000 to $5 million. Those are my average clients. I have a precious few that are in the taxable category. Anybody out there know how much you can, not Eric and not Bill, how much can you leave to a non-spouse and not pay taxes this year? Any guesses?
3 million.
$11.58 million per person. So if you've got a spouse, that means you can leave $23 million to your children or your other beneficiaries without federal estate tax. And of course, North Carolina has no estate tax. So that's very rarefied atmosphere. Statistics I've seen says that 0.02% of Americans fall into that category. So that's not even the 1%ers, that's the 0.02%ers. But you have a handful of those clients for which we do more advanced planning. But for our average clients, we do pretty basic estate planning. If they have other concerns, they have a special needs child, they have interest in making sure that they can collect Medicaid. One of my partners is a certified elder law specialist. He's in our Asheville office, Larry Hartley. There are only about 15 board certified elder law specialists in the state, and he's one of them. So if you or someone else in your circle of friends and family need to do some planning to make sure that they become eligible for Medicaid before they need to go into a nursing facility, then you need to see a person like Larry to make sure you get all those ducks in a row. We also do a lot of charitable planning. And I do everything from setting up private foundations to charitable remainder trusts. And it's kind of surprised me this year how many charitable remainder trusts I've done, because the common wisdom is that in a low interest environment, you don't do many charitable remainder trusts. But I've done them and continuing to do them, even though the interest rate of applicable federal rate is somewhere around 0.6%. And but people have been wanting to do that because, in some part because of the Secure Act. I've had clients who have now, and I'm sure Eric has too, who have done Roth conversions and in light of the Secure Act coming through. The Secure Act, for those of you who don't know, I'm not quite sure who or what it makes secure, but the Secure Act is just a tax that the federal government has enacted. It was a bipartisan, almost uniformly approved by both sides of the aisle. Unheard of these days, bill that went through in December of 2019. And what it has done is had the effect of disallowing you to pass on your IRA assets to children who then can stretch them out over their own life expectancy. Now we have the situation where only a select few can do that. Natalie Choate, who's probably the national expert on all things IRA, was giving a lecture, and she said, well, we now have 3 categories of beneficiaries: gold, silver, and bronze. The gold are spouses. Spouses still get to inherit the IRA and treat it as if it's their own, stretch it out over their remaining life expectancy. The silver are if you have a minor child, not a minor grandchild, but a minor child, the child can defer taking the money out. And under the Secure Act, you have to take it out within 10 years. Can defer that withdrawal until the 11th year if you structure it properly, or else they have to take it out of 10 years. If you have a minor child, and that's dependent on state law, generally anywhere between the ages of 18 and 26 are the ages of minority. And then you add the period of 10 years onto that when they have to pull the money out. So minor children are one category. Children that have or anyone who's a beneficiary has disabilities or a chronic illness, and those are strictly defined in the tax code. And finally, a beneficiary who is less than 10 years younger than you. So those are the only people who can get the stretch out. Everybody else is a bronze, which means when they get the IRA, they have got to take it out in 10 years. Historically, well, I mean, historically since 2001, we have been structuring our trusts so that our clients can have their children take those assets out over their life expectancy rather than have to pay the taxes all at once or have to pay the taxes more quickly than that. And that has the effect of, as anybody in the financial industry knows, of extending the period of tax-free growth for those assets and acting as a multiplier. I can remember from years ago a statement someone made that if you inherited a $50,000 IRA at 35 and stretched it out to your life expectancy of 85, then that $50,000 IRA would be over $2.7 billion.
Wow.
So it was quite a benefit that you got by this stretch out. Now they have cut that short to 10 years. There was some thought about doing it at 5. At least they extended it to 10. The problem that I've had with some of my clients is that if they have the planning that we've done for them up until this year, those trusts that were structured for their children to protect those IRA assets allowed them to stretch it out, and it was called a conduit trust. Now, if you have that conduit language in the trust, apply that to your beneficiary, they have to take it out 10%, 10%, 10% through those 10 years in the 11th year taking out any remainder in it. Now that'd be fine if they were, your beneficiaries were 60 or 65 at the time they inherited the IRA, because maybe they would be in lower earning years. But what if they inherited the IRA when they were 45, 55, 60, when they were at the peak of their earning capacity? Now they're having to add to their taxable income. The workaround that we have for that, and it's not a perfect workaround, all it does is allow a little bit more flexibility that the beneficiaries can delay the payout. You know, it's a numbers game, but one that you don't have to run the numbers until you're there. A numbers game where you can see whether you want to take it out in year 1, year 2, all the way up to year 11, and in any amount, in any proportion, if you've got a accumulation trust as the catcher's mitt for that IRA in your planning. So we've been offering that solution to some of our clients. But that's been the Secure Act. Last year, we had the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which that's what gave us this $11 million exclusion. And because of that, took a lot of people out of consideration for being having a taxable estate. So we started looking around, well, where else could we save tax dollars? And we have been changing plans since last year to give a surviving spouse a general power of appointment, which has the effect of throwing the assets that they inherit from their first spouse into their estates at their death, thereby getting a secondary step up in basis in all of the assets the couple owned, such that, does everybody know what a step up in basis is? I say these things and I wonder if I'm making any sense. A basis is what you paid for something. So you paid $10 for a share of Walmart stock back in the day, and that Walmart stock is now trading at 100. And if you sell it during your lifetime, you're going to pay a capital gains tax on the difference between what you paid for it, 10, and what you sold it for, 100. So you'll pay the tax on your $90 worth of capital gain. Well, the biggest loophole in the entire tax code is the step up in basis at death. When you die, your assets all get stepped up to the date of death value. So if instead of selling the Walmart stock yourself or giving it to your kids while you're alive, they inherit it at your death and it's worth $100, they sell it for $100 and they pay 0 capital gains tax. So that is a huge, huge loophole. They periodically talk about doing away with that, but so far it's not gained any traction that I've seen. But what we typically did prior to the change in Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was we would not have the surviving spouse have that, because we wanted to make sure that we captured and made sure that we made use of the surviving spouse's available exclusion and had enough coverage. But now with the higher exclusion, most people have enough coverage. If you do not, in 2026, under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that exclusion is going to go back down to 5 million. So if you are approaching 5 million or approaching 10 million as a couple, and that could be in your future, one of the things you might want to consider doing right now is making gifts currently. The IRS has already said there will not be a clawback if they reduce the estate tax exclusion to $5 million in 2026. So if you gave away $5 million now, and then you had another $5 million in your estate when you died, they wouldn't claw that given away back into your estate and tax on it. So that's something you should consider if you are fortunate enough to be in that category. Let me see, any other little words of wisdom? Oh, I wanted to talk to you about trust planning. Trust planning not only avoids probate if it's done properly. By properly, I mean you set up the trust and then you fund it. But it also avoids something called guardianship. I don't know if this has been a problem for you folks there in Jackson County, but it's becoming a problem here in Henderson County. And one of my new associates who moved up here from Florida said it's rampant in Florida. People have been, I call it client hijacking. What they do is your neighbor, a friend, somebody you don't even know, decides that you've gone around the bend and they can apply to be your guardian. If they are located in this state, they might even get precedence over a family member who's in another state to be your guardian. What that does is it makes them in charge of all of your funds. What I've personally seen is a client well, she wasn't my client, but she had assets mostly in her home. Her neighbor became her guardian. The neighbor sold out her home out from under her, stuck her into a nursing home of her choice, the guardian's choice, and reduced all her bills to one bill a month, paying for the retirement home, and charged her a fee of $106,000 for 2 years of guardianship services. I can't make this stuff up. It's horrible. Now, if you have close family and people watching over you, that's not likely to happen, but not everybody is in that situation. And we've seen it. We had a case here in Hendersonville where it was a woman who ran a local coffee shop, and she had a customer who would come in every morning and have breakfast, and he was all alone, had no family. And she managed to get his power of attorney and become his guardian. and looted everything, including making herself the beneficiary of his $2 million IRA. So, but if you have your assets in a trust, it's nigh on impossible for somebody that you haven't chosen to get a handle on those assets that are in the trust. I had a client she was eccentric when she was younger, but she got more eccentric as she got older. And her only family were 2 nephews up in the Chicago area, and who she had named as her successor trustees. She had a guardianship pressed upon her. A local attorney, who shall remain nameless, was named her guardian. And the attorney pitched an absolute fit because my client had all her assets in the trust. And she says, well, I'm supposed to be her guardian. The court has appointed me, and I can't get my hands on any of these assets. And my response was, tell it to a judge and see if he's willing to overturn 1,000 years of trust law in your favor. So she disappeared. I haven't heard from her. But that's a secondary reason. But the final reason I like trusts is because if you do have downstream beneficiaries that you care about, children, grandchildren, etc., you can give those children or grandchildren assets in a protected form. So rather than give them their assets outright, you get your 1/3, Johnny, Sally, you get 1/3, and Judy, you get 1/3. You can give them those same assets, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, in a trust. And what that does is it gives them a gift within a gift. They have the assets. They can be their own trustee if you trust them to be so. They can make distributions to themselves, limited only to their health, education, maintenance, and support, which isn't much of a limitation. But nobody, and I do mean nobody, can take those assets away from them. So if they are ever sued, divorced, or declare bankruptcy, those assets will remain where you want them to remain, and you will not have unintended beneficiaries like someone who has sued your child or somebody who has divorced your child and is now an ex-in-law. I have the world's best daughter-in-law. I'll put her up against anybody, and I love her dearly. But if something should happen to my son, I'm not interested in making sure her next lifestyle is a great improvement. I want to make sure that my grandson is protected. So I have left assets to my son in trust, in further trust to my grandson, and it's protected. And furthermore, it's out of the tax system. I don't care who's elected in the next election. The assets that are in trust, if the beneficiary does not have a general power of appointment, meaning they can leave it to anybody on the planet, if they're limited to descendants of yours, charities, and spouses, which isn't much of a limitation for most people leave their assets. But if they are limited to that, then it's not includable in their estate, and I don't care what the estate tax exemption is. We are getting set to set out letters to our clients. We are expecting, no matter who is elected, but particularly if the Democrats win the next election, we are anticipating that we are going to see some increases in taxes and a reduction in the estate tax exemption. For sure, it would go back to 5 million and not stay at the 11 million adjusted for inflation. So we are sending out notices to clients. Please take a look at your finances, make sure that there's nothing that you want to give away now, and make sure it's not subject to tax later. That's about all I've got to impart today. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. We are open. We are open at however our clients want us to be open. We're in the office. You can't see it, but right in front of me is a plexiglass shield that runs down the length of my conference table. We wear masks. We have face shields. We wear gloves. We are determined that none of our clients will ever get sick by visiting us. That said, we also conduct meetings with our clients via Zoom, like this one. We also do just phone conferences, and we do parking lot signings. So we're doing everything we can to make sure our staff and our clients are kept safe.
Well, before
Thank
we
you,
get
Lee.
into, yeah, thanks, Lee and Eric. And let me just make a couple of observations. One clear observation is that you don't want to be dealing with this kind of stuff in a crisis, whether it's a health crisis or some other kind of family crisis. Dealing with financial matters and legal matters at that point in time is just, it doesn't make any sense. So part of the purpose of this was to get people thinking early enough so as to avoid that. My second observation is that this is sort of a nice segue, I think, from our session that we had 2 weeks ago, Dr. Rodney Tucker, who emphasized in the health aspect of one's life to have these family conversations. Now, I think from my standpoint and my family, we want to have those kinds of conversations around financial matters and around, you know, just what does a trust mean? What is going to happen? What's likely to be the case when we the second dies? And I don't think enough people have these kinds of conversations, number one. And I would ask that of both of you, is that important in your line of work as well as the health kind?
I'd say absolutely. I understand why some families do not want to share financial information with their children. I've got one client who's got about a $35 million estate. He and his wife live, I wouldn't say they live like destitutes, but they live modestly. They drive a 10-year-old car. They do not live extravagantly. And so their children, I don't think, have any idea that their parents have that much money. And in point of fact, they don't want to leave that much money to their children. They have taken to heart what Warren Buffett said: I'm going to leave my kids enough money so they can do something, but not enough money so they can do nothing. And so they leave each of their 4 children $1 billion, and the rest is going to charity. And they did not want to share that with their kids in advance, and I could understand that. But those parents that take the opportunity, and we are always available for our clients. I even come in on Saturdays and holidays to meet with people's families when they're visiting, so that they tell me how much information they want to impart to their family, and I do that amount of discussion. And it cuts down on the anxiety that the children have. They don't feel like they have been kept in the dark. They don't feel like their parents may have been favoring one child over another or done something that they don't understand. And it really helps enormously. I have one partner who does pretty much nothing but estate litigation, and that always arises out of the situation where somebody is surprised. And most people do not like surprises, even happy ones like birthday parties. Having had one, it was...
Yeah, Bill, and I would say the Lee's comment about Warren Buffett there just makes me think too, as we take clients through that math exercise around quantifying the degree of critical capital that they need for their own lifestyle in events where we find excess capital. As we're talking with clients about gifting strategies, I find that many of my clients do not want to automate gifting to their kids because they don't want them to build that into their budget. And so I think that's another good way to have that financial conversation, is through an intentional lifetime gifting strategy where you can talk about perhaps a range of annual gifts where the bottom of that range might be 0 and the top of that range might be something else. But in years when the parents, for example, replace cars or renovate houses or things, maybe there's not a gift. In years where those things don't happen. But again, I think it's an opportunity just to educate, and it's a kind of an easy way to open up that dialogue to say, hey, we think we might have some excess, but we don't have so much that you need to plan on this coming every year. And we found that to be a great strategy for clients as well.
I've had a couple of clients who have had a more Machiavellian approach. I mean, maybe that's too strong a term, but what they have done was I had a client had 2 sons, and they had quite a bit of money, and they gave each of their sons a portfolio of stock of $1 million. And they just wanted to see what the sons did. And they were going to base their future giving, including their lifetime gifts at death, based on how they thought their sons approached financial planning and what they did with the money. And they were both pleasantly surprised, I'm glad to say, that both boys came through, and they were frugal and they were prudent, and mom and dad were very happy. That hasn't always been the case. I've had clients who have tried similar strategies, and it has not worked so well, but at least they know what they can expect when they're gone.
How about other questions or comments?
I would like to thank the church and you and others involved for making this available to us. And I'd like to ask Lee a little bit about I'm a retired physician, so I know a little bit about Medicare and importance of billing and payments and things, but it seems like not near as much is known about legal guidelines like we're getting today, and other perhaps benefits. So the cost of doing what you have described, could you give me some feel for that? I live in Georgia, spend the time up here in the summer in North Carolina.
Okay, there is a huge difference between Georgia and North Carolina in terms of probate systems and others. I'm not a Georgia attorney, so I wouldn't want to opine on that. All I can do is tell you, I've had 2 cases where I have had Georgia attorneys who prepared documents for North Carolina residents, and that has not worked out well. And I wouldn't presume to do documents for a Georgia resident. But I have lots of colleagues in Georgia. In fact, I have a Zoom meeting with a bunch of them tomorrow. So if you want some referrals, just email me and I'm happy to give them to you, of people that I have worked with for years and have the highest degree of, and Bill knows those folks from his days at SunTrust, I'm sure too, so he could give you some leads as well. Good estate planning attorneys and elder law specialists in Georgia. I know enough about elder law to be dangerous. So whenever I have questions about it, I go to my partner, Larry, and I go, Larry, is this an appropriate client for elder law planning and Medicaid planning? And he will review the numbers with me and make that determination. So I don't go there myself. But I'm happy to help any way I can if you've got questions, and I can either forward them to Larry, who can get the answers out of his Georgia colleagues.
I noticed that you're a baseball fan in reference to catcher's mitt. Give me some ballpark figures of what it costs to do a trust.
To set up a trust, it's so individual and so dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. What we offer in our firm is we give you a free 2-hour individual consultation. We ask you to fill out some information for us beforehand. We do not charge you for that. You come in, we go over your particular situation, and describe what we think is the best solution for you, and then you say A or nay and walk away. So if you're interested in getting that consultation, please contact us and we can make that either by Zoom or in person or however you'd like to do it.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I know that question was directed at Lee, but I would just say, to the extent you need Georgia attorneys, we are in Atlanta as well. We can always help you find someone. And the only thing I would add to that, since you raised the issue of living in Georgia but having a North Carolina home, I think that, to me, that's just one of those things that underscores the importance of good planning, because if you have out-of-state property, Georgia's a great state to do probate in. It's an easy probate state. But by virtue of the fact of your North Carolina property, you would then have to go through North Carolina probate. And so I think when you've got multiple properties in multiple states, no matter what the states are, it further emphasizes the soundness of having a trust-based plan. So.
Perfectly. Thank you, Eric. This is better.
How much does it cost to do a trust? Or did you tell me that went by me? How much does it cost?
I don't want to say that because A, I don't know if the trust is the most appropriate vehicle for you because I don't know enough about you. And then B, I'd like to have a chance to talk to you, understand exactly what your wishes are, and then I could give you a range of prices for various components of the plan and you can choose.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? All of this is designed, this is our second session. Hopefully some of you have seen the recording of the first session, I hope. But it's the second session of creating one's legacy. And I, for one, can start to see very clearly how all this work that can be done in advance makes that legacy very real. And how that legacy is then spent or given out is much easier with all this work that's done up front. Rob's going to speak to next week, but that falls right into line with the spiritual aspect of creating one's legacy and not having things decided at the last minute regarding one's funeral and burial services. So again, this all will be, it has been recorded and will all be on the website. And I think Rob Ellen's going to send out things to parishioners, hopefully that emails out to parishioners that will advise them of that fact.
Yeah, each of these invitations that we have has the previous week's recording on it. And so next week's will have the previous 2 recordings on it. And when we're all done, we'll even duplicate our efforts and say, here are the 3 recordings from this time, and really hope that you pay attention to these decisions. As we have said, it is are really best made not in a crisis mode, but made in a time when you can really think. And in our case, for our parishioners, pray over all these things and these decisions that are can get really complicated and things you might not think about. Hey, I own property in Florida and North Carolina. Do I realize all that's going to happen, and what provisions do I need to make for that? As you said, Lee, a lot of people just make decisions. This goes to these people and these charities, and they think they're done, but it's really not that. It's not that simple in many cases, and we just have to. There's a level of complexity, which is probably household to household, that needs to be addressed in good ways.
And I want to thank Lee and Eric again for reprising their role of 2 years ago when they did that. They're very good. It's not quite as good as being in person, but it's close. So I appreciate your doing this.
Yes, and I appreciate, Bill, you're reaching out to them and getting them, having them to be with us again. They're just, their wisdom and all that, their experiences, you can really tell it, and that it's great to have you. And this is really a great gift to our parishioners, the beginning of a conversation, which I hope many of them will take. And Eric, I think your sort of love letter that you talked about had some of the very pertinent questions at the bottom of it that we will address next week, which really has to do with the spiritual aspect when it comes time to celebrate one's life. What are your plans for burial? Is it casket? Is it ashes? Where will those be buried? The nature of your service, hymns that you love, things that you want to have said on your tombstone, all those other kind of things, if they're applicable. Just, what can you decide to not leave your family wondering or arguing in the worst case scenario? Let them fight over it. It's probably not the most loving way to do it, Lee, as you were saying. Just let them fight over it. It's like, they must have passed the buck in life too, instead of passing the buck in death. And there's a better way to do that. So come for that next week. We'll wind out this, and again, hopefully this is all a part of one's legacy, which is really about love in the end, and doing a loving, caring thing with all of one's decisions and possessions.
Father Rob, can I leave you with a groaner of a joke, since you're going to be talking about funerals?
Sure, please.
World famous linguist dies, And one of his colleagues comes up to the widow and says, "Would you mind if I said a word during the service?" And she says, "Of course not. Please do." So he gets up there and he says, "Plethora." And she says, "Thank you. It means a lot." Horrible, isn't it?
You're on mute now.
That's right. There you go. Good.
Can't resist.
It's always good to break the ice with a little laughter when we're talking about serious things. So there you go. That's good.
Cheers for y'all.
All righty.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone. Thank you, Lee.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Eric. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in.